Nathan and I just completed a draft where Nathan took Josh Allen at the 3-1, and I took Jalen Hurts at the 3-11. And so both of us who notoriously get on this channel, tell you, hey, don't draft quarterback till late, blah, 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 took quarterbacks early in a fantasy football draft. And let's talk about why we did that, or let's talk about when you should do that, because it's important to know when you should be selecting your quarterback and what type of quarterback to take this year. A couple of things here that we're going to talk about. Are mobile quarterbacks more injury prone? Are mobile quarterbacks really more valuable in fantasy? And are quarterbacks as a whole becoming more mobile? So let's look at some data let's start with the durability question, because the durability is a big thing for rushing quarterbacks. A lot of people say, I'm not drafting a rushing quarterback. They're going to get hurt, blah, blah, blah. I don't feel like they have enough safety for me to do that. I understand. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how many quarterbacks actually finish their season healthy. Overall, not even rushing quarterbacks, right? And a healthy season is going to be 14 games played or more for a starting quarterback, okay? And a rushing quarterback we're going to define as a quarterback that plays 30 or that has 30 or more rushing yards a game. So for quarterbacks overall, when you're looking at the data, in 2021, you had 24 quarterbacks finish the season healthy. That's 75%. That's
pretty good.
22, we had 19 quarterbacks finish the season healthy. That's 59%. That's not good. In 23, you saw more of the same with 20 at 63%. And everybody remembers last year it felt like there were a significant amount of quarterbacks getting hurt and screwing you in your fantasy leagues if you drafted one of those guys, right?
Well, the difference between that and 2022 as well was that all the guys that were getting hurt were the high-end, high-upside guys that were in contention to be top 6 to 12 producing quarterbacks.
Bingo.
So it was rough.
Again, a very low fraction of mobile quarterbacks, just given the fact that there aren't as many mobile quarterbacks, and then given the fact that they're probably more injury prone, they finished the season at an even lower rate. When you're looking at 2021, 4 quarterbacks that were rushing quarterbacks over 30 yards per game finished the season. 4 in 2022, 3 in 2023. So while we would attest that rushing quarterbacks are more valuable in fantasy leagues, that they're higher upside picks, that you should go for them, there are really only 3 or 4 of them. That's it, right? And so, the odds that a quarterback plays at least 14 games and rushes for at least 30 yards a game is extremely low. So I think this kind of ties back to the picks we just made. Josh Allen is one of those guys where he's stayed fairly durable. He has done a good job of staying out of trouble, and we thought he'd get hurt a lot more than he has up to this point. And he has been consistently a top 3 quarterback because of that.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hurts is really the same way. Jalen Hurts has played 15 or more games each of the last 3 years. And so when you're looking at that statistic alone, you look at Jalen Hurts as a guy that is notorious for being in the weight room and being pound for pound one of the strongest quarterbacks in the NFL. And you think, okay, these are 2 guys that are really durable, and I think that's what makes them really safe. So is it worth taking the risk on a mobile quarterback? And the answer is absolutely, because when you're looking at some of the data for mobile quarterbacks, when they do finish, these are the 3 that finished in 2021. You had the QB1 with Josh Allen, the QB9 with Hurts, and the QB10 with Murray. 2022, the 4 quarterbacks that finished, Josh Allen was QB2, Jalen Hurts was QB3, Justin Fields was QB6, and Daniel Jones was QB9. We're talking about Justin Fields and Daniel Jones being quarterback 1s. 2023, wow. Josh Allen, quarterback 1, Jalen Hurts, quarterback 2, Lamar Jackson, quarterback 4. So quarterbacks that play at least 14 games and rush for at least 30 yards will finish as a quarterback 1. And by will, we mean every single quarterback that has done that in the past 3 years has accomplished that. It's a 100% hit rate. And it's 2022. Again, Fields, Jones, they were terrible NFL quarterbacks. Awful, completely horrendous. And you're going to see probably at least one of them, probably both of them at some point this year. But they're mobile, and they stayed healthy. And those are the 2 things. Are you mobile? Do you stay healthy, right? So when you're looking for a quarterback in the draft, it's not about how good they are or how high their upside actually is or their team situation or blah, 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 or even on a good offense, because the Bears' offense wasn't that bad last year. They brought in DJ Moore, right? Simply, will they stay healthy? That's the main question. And that's going to be a gamble. And so I want you to kind of touch here on quarterbacks becoming more mobile as a whole, because you see guys that come into the league, like a Justin Herbert, for example, when he had his really good year, right? You see guys like a Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has supplemented a lot of his production with some rushing touchdowns and things like that. Are QBs as a whole becoming more mobile in the NFL is the question.
Long story short, not necessarily. You have QB averages that are really all over the map when you're looking at the history of the last couple of years, and they've kind of stayed within the teens of average rushing yards year over year. So when you're looking at 2023, you're seeing 15.87, 2022, you had a spike 19.8, and then 2021, 13.8. It's just kind of all over the place. There's a lot of variance there. You don't really know what's going to happen. What I will say is there's a difference between mobility and rushing upside, right? Because there's a lot of people in the NFL, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL right now that are capable, they're capable of running the ball. And they do here and there. And they'll offer you a couple of rushing touchdowns, right? They'll sneak some over the goal line. They'll be able to get you, a couple 100 yards, 300 rushing yards in a year. But that's not really giving you a leg up on your league mates because, again, when you're looking at it in the grand scheme of things, there's about half the quarterbacks in the league are able to put up 200 to 300 rushing yards just by, scrambling, getting outside of, tough situations when they're under pressure and things like that. So, again, when we're talking about the rushing QBs this year, I do think it is unique this season because we have seen this year more high rushing upside QBs than I think we have in a while because of Anthony Richardson coming back fully healthy and then Jayden Daniels being expected to be the starter for Washington. So you're looking at 6 quarterbacks between Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Kyler, AR, and Jayden Daniels. And I think that's really what we want to focus on with every single one of those guys in their current price right now in fantasy football. Clearly, we've already established that the upside and the value of taking rushing QBs is absolutely worth it at price more often than not if they stay healthy for the entire season. But when you're talking about the rest of the field, right, we're not really accounting for the 300 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Again, it's not adding that much compared to what the rest of the field is doing. So let's start with Josh Allen.
Yeah, so Josh Allen, we've told you on this channel before, like it's all of this, unless you get Josh Allen, right? And that was Nathan's unless when he drafted him 20 minutes ago at the 3-1 in a draft. Yep. And this is because Josh Allen has been the quarterback 1 each of the past 4 years, but 1 where he was the quarterback 2 in 2022. Except for 1 year where he finished quarterback 2 to Patrick Mahomes. Even that year, he scored 409 points in PPR leagues. The year before that, 409 points. The year after that, 410 points. It's actually like within a point in the last 3 years is what he's finished, which is insane, right? Because this is a guy each of these years who's ran the ball 122, 126, 111 times and has 6, 7, and then 15 touchdowns last year. And all the while playing 17 games each of the last 3 years and playing 16 games the 2 years before that. The dude has been not only historically efficient from a rushing standpoint, he has been historically durable. He is the best of the best. He is the one guy that gives you a clear advantage over every single person in your league, right? That's why Josh Allen is the exception. That's why Josh Allen is the early QB strategy, right? And so taking Josh Allen in a draft is absolutely something that if you can do it in the 3rd round or later, you do it. Not doing it in the 2nd this year. Not doing it. 3rd, absolutely, I'll do it. And I think that if you have the opportunity to do that and you have a good enough, safe enough start up front, especially at the wide receiver position to do that, I think you feel good about doing it. But let's go through all these quarterbacks. I'll let you talk about Hurts.
Yeah, and before I talk about Hurts, I just want to reinforce something. With the exception of Mahomes, if you are taking CJ Stroud in the 6th round, if you're taking Jordan Love in the 7th, Joe Burrow in the 7th, versus a guy like Goff, Purdy, or even Caleb Williams in the 12th or 13th round of your fantasy draft, there is no difference. I promise you there is no difference. Because at the end of the day, the likelihood that Brock Purdy or Jared Goff will finish as a top 6 producing quarterback is just as high as Burrow, Love, and Stroud. It is. So just keep that in mind when you're taking or targeting a non-rushing QB. Be aware of what you're giving up at price, right? And just take the better values when they fall. But Jalen Hurts is one of the guys that you will want to take a shot on in the early rounds if he, ends up falling further than you would expect. And in this draft that we just did, right, Jalen Hurts went at the end of the 3rd round. I mean, we're just talking about not even a year ago when Jalen Hurts was being drafted literally like mid-second. Yep. As a lot of times as the first quarterback off the board, and it was well-deserved, absolutely well-deserved. And he still, ended up QB2 on the year last season. But I think we may potentially be overcorrecting with QBs as a whole in fantasy football, and that's affecting the rushing QBs. And I think Jalen Hurts is one of those guys where you would have dreamed about getting Jalen Hurts at the tail end of the 3rd just a year ago.
Which is exactly why I felt like I had to take him.
Right, and Avery ended up being able to grab him there. But I think Hurts might be one of the better takes here, maybe even more than Josh Allen, because at the end of the day, if Jalen Hurts plays a full season, his upside at being QB1 overall is just as high, in my opinion, as Jalen Hurts, or it's Josh Allen. Yeah. So the next quarterback that may even be potentially the candidate for the best value with rushing QBs is Lamar Jackson at the 5-2.
And Lamar went here, and we were absolutely freaking floored that he fell this far. But with Lamar Jackson, I mean, this is a guy that you're talking about last year winning MVP, but in terms of his fantasy finishes, he's capable of a quarterback one finish because he did it in 2019, but the problem was he had quarterback finishes of 10, 15, and 14 3 years in a row because he missed significant amounts of time, which is exactly what we're talking about in this video, right? He did play all 16 games last year. When he plays his games, when he plays all of his games, when he stays healthy, he's rushing for 150 attempts a year, and he's getting 5 to 7 touchdowns. And that gives him enough to be a top 5 quarterback. Now, again, Lamar Jackson is not only older than he was in 2019, he is also skinnier than he was in 2019. And whether you want to say the size of Lamar Jackson going up and down doesn't change his durability or not, maybe it doesn't. I will say this. I have a lot more questions about Lamar Jackson than I do Jalen Hurts, which is why there is a pretty significant gap in their price right now. With Lamar Jackson, I think unless you're getting him in the 5th round where he's a pretty good value, like where that was, I don't think I'm wanting to take him in the 4th. I think I'm wanting to go receiver there. I think I'm wanting to go running back if there's a good running back that's there. Yeah. And it's nothing against Lamar Jackson, but even Lamar Jackson in his MVP season last year was the QB4. And this is a guy with really high rushing upside. It's a guy, again, that ran for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. And this is also a guy who ran for 1,200 yards his rookie year. I just don't think you're going to see him do that in this system, with the way that he plays now, especially. He's even more of a pocket passer than he was. You saw him pass the ball a career high 457 times last year. And I think you're going to see more of that as he gets into the later years of his career here. With Lamar, again, I see the upside and the merit to taking him probably somewhere starting in the early 5th or at the 4 or 5 turn. But before that, it's hard for me to get on board. And he is a guy historically that when you're looking at finishing the season, and you were even maybe just looking at the data that we were just talking about, Lamar Jackson made this list in 23, 22, and 21 only last year. It was the only year he finished the season healthy and was able to put together a top 12 quarterback finish because of it. So with Lamar, again, be a little bit more cautious with that. But he's obviously a guy that has plenty high upside. Just not 2019 upside. Let's get that out of the way. So
yeah, and Kyler Murray, I want to talk about Kyler Murray before we get to AR here, because I think he's incredibly unique compared to a lot of these rushing QBs like Hurts and Lamar specifically, and even AR and Daniels. Is really next to Josh Allen. He is the highest consistent passing volume asset that you have on top of the rushing upside. So in theory, his ceiling is going to be a lot higher, right? And you saw that in 2020 where he had 24.4 points per game, 3rd in the NFL. And then 2021, 22 points per game. And then he went down the last couple of years, with the ACL. But even when he came back from that injury and everyone expected him, not to be the rushing QB of old and have that upside, he threw the ball 33.5 times per game. And he put up 244 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in 8 games, which coming off an ACL is incredibly impressive. That's really, really solid. So you'd expect that to go up. I mean, he was the Kyler Murray of old that we grew to know and love since 2019. So I would expect a really good bounce back season from Kyler Murray, where they literally just demonstrated in the draft this year that they want to build around the passing game with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, who's expected to have a big year this season. And you tack the rushing upside on top, and you're looking at a really solid value at the tail end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th round. He may be the rushing QB to go with this year in 2024 when you're talking about guys not named Josh Allen.
I honestly, he's probably my favorite value as well.
Yeah.
And so Anthony Richardson here. Anthony Richardson's a guy that a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're talking about durability and how important that is. Then Anthony Richardson is a absolute do not draft him. And we're going to say, hold the phone. We are the first person to acknowledge, A, Anthony Richardson can't afford to get hurt this year, or he is going to earn the injury-prone label. Nathan and I have admitted that as Colts fans. B, Anthony Richardson has a ton of questions. But again, the questions don't matter in this situation, because even if he sucks at passing the ball, he'll be the quarterback one if he plays the whole season. He just will. It's a guy that had 130 rushing yards on 25 attempts and 4 touchdowns in 4 games last year. Not to mention, that was only probably 3 games, because he really missed about a whole game in there. And he also had 17 points in a quarter and a half. So with Richardson, I mean, I'll let you do the math. He was averaging over 40 yards a game and was on track to score a touchdown a game. Dude scores 15 rushing touchdowns, it's over. Yeah. Now, the injury thing. Again, I think a lot of the injuries last year were a little bit fluky, but a lot of people will point to his injury history in Florida, and I think that you can't deny that is something that you have to pay attention to. And so now, again, I think that Anthony Richardson going really into the 5th, into the 6th, where Kyler's going, he obviously is a guy that could be the quarterback one in fantasy football this year. He could, and I think everybody acknowledges that. But he has to stay healthy, and he's not really proven that he can stay healthy as a starting quarterback, not only in the NFL but in college as well. And so I think it makes him. I'm definitely less excited about taking Anthony Richardson as I am Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. And Kyler Murray, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. And let me help you here. Just when you're faced with the decision of should I draft Anthony Richardson or not in the end of the 5th or the 5th round, what's your take on Michael Pittman, right? If your take on Michael Pittman is that he is going to be negatively affected, him and Jonathan Taylor will be negatively affected by the rushing upside that Anthony Richardson has in that offense, then you should be smashing him here in the 5th round. If you are really that low on Pittman and JT. If you think that they're both going to be able to produce and kind of get your own and you're pretty conservative with Anthony Richardson's outlook in 2024, then I'd say you can pass up on him and you can feel comfortable just taking Kyler Murray or even Jayden Daniels multiple rounds later. But to me, I think there's a little bit of like inconsistent logic with Anthony Richardson and his outlook this year and really every asset in that offense, because there's a lot of people that, are not very high on Anthony Richardson, the player, but they're also saying he's going to take away from Pittman and JT's production in that offense when they're expected to score a lot of points. And if you cannot have two negatives there. If you say no to JT and Pittman, you cannot say no to Anthony Richardson at price. You just can't. Not in a Shane Steichen offense, not what he's shown as a play caller in Philly, and what he showcased with Gardner Minshew as a quarterback last year in Indy. So keep that in mind. Jayden Daniels is going to be the last guy here, who I think is a really, really curious case, going often 9th, 10th round. He's a rookie. That's why he's going this late, is he's a rookie. And as a passer, I mean, talk about unproven. He's just as unproven as Anthony Richardson, right? But maybe even more so because he showcased, some questions, big time questions at LSU. Not to mention he was throwing the ball to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, which is a pretty nice advantage. He's not going to have those guys in the NFL. He'll have Terry, which is really good, and he'll have Ben Sinnott, which I really like. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think a Cliff Kingsbury offense, don't overlook a Cliff Kingsbury offense, because even though he does have questions as a passer, I don't think that's going to keep Cliff Kingsbury from throwing the ball. I mean, you're talking about a Big 12 offense in the NFL. It's probably going to look a lot like what Arizona did when Kingsbury was the head coach there in Arizona with Kyler Murray. So there's some pretty significant upside there. When you're looking at, again, I'm going to go back to Kyler's production. I don't think Daniels and Kyler are, nearly the same prospects comparably, but 11th in points per game as a rookie, Kyler Murray was 18.2 points per game. If you're getting, around that production in the 9th, 10th round with Jayden Daniels, I'm pretty excited about that. And think it's, a pretty decent price for a rookie quarterback with the upside that he offers. Because not even AR was going that low last year.
No, and I think, the main difference between Jayden Daniels and Kyler, and the reason that people have so many questions about Jayden Daniels is they are way about the same thing. And Jayden Daniels is 6 inches taller than him. And that's a lot of times people watching Jayden Daniels rush at LSU, and they're like, that dude's getting crushed every time he rushes. Like, slide. Or gain some weight. And I think that's why a lot of people are just assuming he is a candidate to be somebody who gets hurt in the NFL. You can't predict injury. I will say he's more at risk than other people. But again, I think a lot of these guys are. Now, I will say this. If there's one takeaway from this video, Hurts, Allen, and Murray are our 3 go-to guys this year, right? Yes. And about anywhere from 3 to 4 guys finish in the top 12 because they finished their season as a rushing quarterback. Those are our picks to do it. And we love A-Rich. We love Lamar. We especially love A-Rich. But, I think those 3 guys are our favorite values. You've got to be honest, right? Yeah. And Kyler, outside of his ACL tear, Kyler has shown that he can be durable. Before really the ACL tear is the only thing that's taken a chunk out of his career. So let us know where you're going to be drafting quarterback and which quarterbacks you like targeting this year. If you want our draft guide, which gives you pretty good guidance on which quarterbacks to draft and which ones are the best values, you can go to flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain, choose some other flocker tier, and you get our draft guide. You get our projections tool, which was just posted. You get access to the drawings for our listener leagues that we draft live on the channel. You get access to our rankings. You get one-on-one advice. You get our Discord community. You get all of it. So flockfantasy.com/domain. Link is in the description. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you play fantasy football. But we appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you later.